Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Thomas Reutman. I'm a hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Cerise Waiters is the clerk of this hearing. This hearing is being recorded via Zoom and will be available afterward through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website, sfpublicworks.org. As this is a virtual hearing, there's no sign-in sheet. So if you'd like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the email address listed on the hearing notice. If you do not have that with you, please contact the Bureau of Urban Forestry at urbanforestry@sfdpw.org. This public hearing is being held to consider two items. First will be public comment, where members of the public may address me on matters that are within the department's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. And second will be hearing order 207856 to consider the removal of 2 trees within Supervisoral District 3 at the following locations. Removal of 1 street tree with replacement adjacent to 1563 Hyde Street. Staff has approved the removal and the public has protested, and that's tree ID 11048. The second is the removal of 1 street tree with replacement adjacent to 1999 Hyde Street. Staff has approved the removal and the public has protested. That's tree ID 251592. My job as the hearing officer is to gather the facts for the hearing item, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determination. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the director. The director will make the final determinations. When the director's determinations are made, the department will notify you of them if you have provided contact information. The hearing will proceed as follows for today's cases. First, I'll ask Public Works staff to speak and present the case. Then I'll allow the property owner, applicant, or appellant, then any member of the public or witness who'd like to speak, and then the department again, if the department would like to address any comments, and then property owner, applicant, or appellant again, if the person has rebuttals. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you are a party to this proceeding, I will call on you to speak. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. If you are a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call for public comments, then use Zoom's raise your hand feature to put yourself in the queue to speak. If you've dialed in by phone, raise your hand by pressing *9. And when told you are being unmuted, press *6 to unmute yourself before speaking. When it's your turn to speak, I will recognize you. Again, if you'd like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or the applicant. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony by the end of the hearing. If I feel a question is warranted, I will ask the question. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. We'll now begin the hearing. First, are there any public comments on matters that are not on today's agenda?
Good morning.
John Nolte, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Because of the recent storms that we've had in the last 3 months, there are still all over the city, and I've seen them, branches still on sidewalks, and I believe that's the jurisdiction of DPW or some other entity that to take these branches out of the right of way so people can walk safely down the streets without having to have to go around branches, and especially people that are blind and so forth cannot see these things, and so therefore they will be running into them. And also people that are on ADA, people that are in wheelchairs, walkers, etc. Well, it takes them longer to get down the sidewalk because they have to go around branches that have not been picked up by DPW after the recent storms. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
No other hands at this time.
Okay, then we'll proceed to order number 207856. Can I have the Public Works make the presentation, please?
Good morning. My name's Sarah Stacy. I'm with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry, and everyone can see my screen. I'm the staff representative for the one case we have today, and just have a brief outline, a few talking points before we get into the two trees that we posted for removal. There are kind of two policies that help us make decisions when we're assessing whether we should post a tree for removal, whether a tree needs to be removed. And one is the Urban Forestry Ordinance, which is codified under Article 16 of the Public Works Code. And this establishes our authorization and also standards for addressing the management of our urban forest. It also gives us kind of ownership over the street trees, and requires us to protect healthy trees in good condition and maintain a clean and safe public right-of-way. And so that's also part of the Public Works strategic plan to ensure a safe, clean, and green public right-of-way, as the member of the public provided that comment about the recent storm damage. Public Works is spending a lot of time still mopping up some of that debris, branches that we've been to make the site safe, and we've either stacked those branches near the sidewalk and curb, or there may still be sites we haven't gotten to that we're still mopping up from the storm. So we are actively working to address all those issues. So there are tough decisions to be made when we're making these management decisions about the public safety of the right-of-way, and also our need to protect and preserve the urban tree canopy, which is really important green infrastructure of the city. And we do acknowledge and recognize San Francisco as one of the smallest urban forests of larger cities in the United States. So it is important that we preserve our urban tree canopy. So the one order we have today is order number 207856, and this is in regards to two ficus trees located at 1563 and 1999 Hyde Street. Both these trees are in the Supervisoral District 3. And specifically, this is for the removal of one street tree adjacent to 1563 Hyde and one street tree adjacent to 1999 Hyde. We, our urban forestry staff, we approved those trees for removal. We posted them for removal with a 30-day notification period, and we received a public protest for both those trees. So I'm going to share some photos about each site. This is the site at, this is the site at 1563 Hyde. It's tree site number 2. It's the tree where the orange arrow is showing, and this is a photo from March 22, the day after the very severe windstorm on March 21st. The public reported this fallen branch. This is Hyde Street, and there is the cable car line. So there are several targets here. Pedestrians, the sidewalk, cars, the street itself, the muni lines, the cable cars. And this is a large ficus tree. It's more than 35 feet tall. It has several deficiencies. And for that reason, our staff, posted it for removal. It has had several recent failures, branch failures, some of them very large. It has poor structure because of the codominant stems and poor branching union. And it also has poor live crown ratio, which means it's, in terms of its height, its canopy ratio in relative to the tree's height, it's very low. We generally look for something at least 50–40%, and this tree's canopy is all at the very ends of the branches, as you'll see, making it more susceptible to failure. To summarize here, the ficus tree has 2 large codominant stems with a narrow point of attachment where the 2 branch unions are. There's a low live crown ratio, less than 40%, and it has very long lever arms with an unbalanced canopy. And it has in the past, it had a very large scapholum failure, and I'll show some pictures of that. And this tree can be replaced in situ, so in the same tree basin. This arrow points to where there was a previous failure in the past. A very large scapholum tore out here. This is somewhat, we know, common for the species, the ficus tree, to have these kind of structural failures. And that's why in the past, around 2014, 2015, we established the ficus tree removal criteria. This is the other side of that branching union, and you can see here those 2 codominant stems, how the 2 stems come together at a very narrow point of attachment, almost what we call V-shaped. It's very narrow, and this is just a point of weakness in the tree, and where the tree is susceptible to having one of those limbs tear out, especially when they're equal diameter, equal width, both those 2 stems. And then, as I talked about the crown ratio, here we can see the full height of the tree, and actually the crown dimension to that ratio of height is very limited. Some people in the public might use the term top heavy. All the tips of the leaves are at the very end of the branches, and there's very little live crown ratio as we strive to get closer to like 50%. And this is a structural weakness in the tree, making it susceptible to failure as well. So for those reasons, all those reasons I've pointed out, we posted this tree for removal. I do believe this is a very good candidate for removal. Hyde Street, historically, that community has tried to preserve as many of the ficus trees as possible. We've pruned these trees recently in the last couple years, I believe in 2020 or 2021. So somewhat very recently, we pruned this corridor, and we have removed the worst ficus on this corridor. And unfortunately, the severe winter weather, damaged some of these ficus trees, and they need to be removed for public safety. And this is the second tree. This is 1999 Hyde Street, Site 1. Again, this photo is fairly recent. This is from March 22nd as well, the day after the March 21st storm. And you can see the damage from that storm. There were several reported branch failures. This tree had actually been posted before the storm in late January. And fortunately, nobody was hurt. There may have been some damage to a car or property. But I do believe, just like the last tree, this tree needs to be removed. It's had several branch failures. It continues to have branch failures. It has a gap now in the tree's canopy, making it more susceptible to failure. And it's just not a safe tree for the public right of way. This tree as well can be replaced on site. Here, I'm just going to show some quick photos of where all the branch failures were. The red arrows point to where limbs failed. This image shows very well that gap in the crown created by those limbs that failed kind of in the center of the tree's crown. And this looks like an image out of Braveheart, but all the arrows are pointing to again, all those branch failures. Some are more in the past, but some are very recent from this winter, beginning around the first storm at the beginning of the new year. So unfortunately, this tree is just at kind of the end of its life, and we can't prune this to make it publicly safe for the right of way. And there are several targets here on Hyde, so we want to uphold public safety. That's all I have. Again, to be consistent with other cases, we posted these trees for removal based on the ficus removal criteria. I've outlined that those things include the poor structure, things like codominant stems, previous failure, storm damage, and then we also have to consider the tree's live crown ratio and the height and size of the tree and the targets. And Hyde Street, in itself is just a busy corridor with a cable car, pedestrians, and street traffic. So I stand behind these removals, and these are tough decisions, and unfortunately we had a very rough winter. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there anyone present that's either the property owner or the applicant for the tree removal that would like to give testimony? I'm going to assume no, but if the clerk tells us otherwise, then we'll give another opportunity for them to speak. So we'll see, is there anyone from the public that is appealing this tree removal that would like to give testimony?
We have John Nolte. Go ahead, you should be able to speak.
Good morning. I'm a little concerned about putting both trees, speaking on both trees at the same time. I feel uncomfortable about that because they are at two separate locations, and also have different issues with each tree. So it makes it hard to in 3 minutes to discuss the issues with each tree. They should be heard separately. They were combined, unfortunately, by the agenda, which I feel, again, is not appropriate to have an agenda to have two different locations. There are several blocks away from each other, to have them put them together and just state they're in District 3. I take note that this is not an appropriate way to agendize. In the past, these were never done this way, so I don't understand why it's this way. And also, it's not appropriate to have that kind of an agenda where you just limbo them in District 3. And so that's my first statement. Next statement goes to, I actually personally went to these trees when they were posted and saw the issues. And also because what we see now is the after fact of DPW going in after a tree failure, and then they also taking out more of the limbs while they're there. So therefore, the damage to the tree was not just damaged by the limb failures that happened at each location, but also the additional chopping by DPW crews, making it even look worse. So therefore, I would suggest, again, since it was not discussed appropriately, that each tree be saved. We need both sides of the street are lined with ficus trees. It would be inappropriately to remove these trees because it would affect the character of the trees on Hyde Street, on both multiple blocks of Hyde, having ficus trees on both sides of the street. It would also affect the scenery because this is a cable car goes down the street, and so replacing it would not with some other tree would be out of character with the current trees that are there. Lastly, the only way to
30 seconds.
The only way to resolve this is to prune the trees, and I don't want to hear about this percentage of trees that shouldn't be on the top of foliage. We've done these type of prunings all over the city for the ficus trees, and I would assume this would be the best remedy for these trees is to be pruned on the top and kept in place. We do not, you don't have a budget to replace the trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that wants to provide testimony on the tree removal?
We have Michael Nolte. Go ahead, Mr. Nolte.
Yes, my name is Michael Nulty, N-U-L-T-Y. I'm a native San Franciscan, and I've watched now many of these hearings where there seems to be a need to remove ficus trees. And as the previous speaker mentioned, when you have a grove of ficus trees in one location, when you start taking out several of the trees, because I'm not sure what's going to happen about the other ficus tree. I just kind of got on Zoom, but we count on tourism in San Francisco, and this is along a cable car line. And when it looks kind of, the image of San Francisco starts not looking good when you have trees that look out of character. Plus the fact that yes, we had storms, but is the pictures being shown actually accurate because of the storm damage or because of other activity that's happened to the trees? So my suggestion is to keep the tree. It still has life to it. Just prune it, and you know, because that's because of its neighboring trees are ficus. So it doesn't make sense to have, you did the same thing around the main library. I mean, there's other locations where the DPW has done a hatchet job on the trees that don't look good for the community when they go by and they wonder what the hell happened here. These used to be nice groves of trees, and we need to keep them if we can that way. So I guess that's all I need to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else at the hearing that would like to provide testimony? Is there any comments from the BUF representative in regards to the comments made by the public?
Hi, this is Sarah Stacy with Urban Forestry. I will just provide comment that we do consider restoration pruning or a very specific reduction cuts, or a very strategic pruning for the ficus trees that was done on 24th Street to try to preserve a lot of that canopy there. And that's been accomplished on Hyde Street, as I previously alluded to. That community has, wanted to preserve, like you said, the character of that street with the ficus trees. We've removed some of the worst ones, and these trees, as I stated and showed, the live crown ratio is so low. All the foliage is at the very ends of the stems. If you prune that off, the tree would have no leaves, or there are no good lateral branches to prune those tips back to. These two tree candidates posed for removal. Pruning is not a mitigation option. It's just, from a professional standpoint, from a certified arborist, and all our inspectors are certified arborists making these decisions. Pruning will not accomplish the goals of making those trees safe while maintaining them as living entities. I, agree there's still life in the tree, but the trees have several structural flaws, and pruning cannot safely mitigate that. The trees cannot be pruned in a proper, correct way to mitigate the safety risk and also maintain a healthy amount of tree foliage for the health of the tree. Thank you.
Thank you. One quick question, Sarah, was there, your presentation kind of identified the two trees that were pretty similar in their disposition and their damage. Was there anything distinguishing between the two, or are they pretty much the same issue?
I feel the tree in front of 1563 Hyde has the two codominant stems in a worse kind of overall structural or habit, meaning the form of the tree compared to the one at 1999. The tree at 1999 has more crown ratio, live crown ratio. So that is a checkpoint in its favor, but it just had so much storm damage in that large gap now in the center point of the canopy, leaving it very unbalanced, with a lot of canopy cantilevered over the street, making those branches susceptible to failure. So they do have some similarities, but they also have some differences in terms of kind of what was the tipping point to make us approve the tree for removal. And I'll also just mention the trees around the library. Several of those trees after the Board of Appeals decision failed. They fell over in the public right of way, and they failed after the Board of Appeals decision said that those trees should be maintained. Those trees actively failed there after Public Works tried to make the sound decision to remove them for public safety.
Thank you for providing that background. I guess the other piece I was curious to follow up on is how the two trees are lumped into the one order. Are they proximate? Is that the reason for putting them in one order?
Oh, sure. We have done this before. We did it before the pandemic, or during the pandemic. I'd have to check the dates. I believe it was during the pandemic, but we routinely review trees and assess their health and condition for the management of our street tree maintenance program, Street Tree SF. And in the past, through that process, we identified dead, dying trees and would list several addresses within a supervisor's district for one agenda item. So we've done that in the past. I feel it's consistent, and I feel like it's consistent, and I'm not sure necessarily what the concern is.
Great, thank you. I think with that, unless there's further comments from the public? If anyone joined late, can you raise your hand or let the clerk know if there's anyone else that didn't get a chance to speak to this? All right, seeing and hearing none. I think the comments are complete and we'll close this item, and we can also end the hearing now.
Was there one further comment? I'm not sure.
There's no other persons who have not had the chance to speak yet. So no, there is no, if you've already been given the chance to speak and you would like to submit further testimony, you're welcome to send it to our email address. But the officer was asking if there was anyone who had not had the chance to speak today. Thank you.
Okay, I think we can close the hearing.